And thank you, Amy, and thank you to everyone for taking the time to join us tonight, giving us an opportunity to share some information with you and to have a chance for you to ask questions of us. My name, as Amy just shared, is Craig Roxborough. I'm the new Registrar and CEO here at the college. I've been here for about 9 or 10 months and have been quickly learning more and more each day about the practice of physiotherapy and about regulation in this particular context. I am joined by a couple of my colleagues who I'll let introduce themselves. Nitin, if we can start with you.
Sure, thank you, Craig. It's Nitin Madhvani here. Have the privilege of standing as the president of the College Council, sometimes also known as the board chair. And I'll pass the baton to Mary Catherine.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mary Catherine. I am a physiotherapist and practice advisor, and I'm so happy to be here tonight to have this conversation with everyone.
And before we start the conversation, we wanted to take advantage of the chat. We were going to use polls tonight, but we couldn't quite get them to work. So we'll use the chat instead. Just as a bit of an icebreaker, maybe you could share with us your go-to morning drink, your beverage of choice for the morning. If you can share those with us in the chat. I'm seeing coffee. Coffee is, of course, the correct answer to this question. I'm also seeing tea, AG1, water. Water is a great way to start. Hibiscus tea, lots of water. Green tea, lots of tea drinkers and water drinkers in the audience tonight. Great. Well, you can keep them coming, but I will move on and just give a little bit of an overview of what it is that we're here to talk about tonight. We do hope to have this be a conversation, but of course, we wanted to take a chance to share some information with you to spark that conversation. So we will be talking a little bit about the role of the college, but trying to make it a bit more grounded in terms of how we're approaching regulatory issues and some of the philosophy that's driving the way that we are regulating. We also want to take an opportunity to share some information with you about our commitment to equity, diversity, and inclusion, what that means for us at the college, and how we're trying to make action and progress in this front. And then lastly, if you've been seeing some of the updates coming from the college, you'll know that there's been work to develop new national standards, setting expectations for the profession. And we want to take a little bit of an opportunity to highlight that work and sort of leave with a call to action to get you involved in the work that we're doing. So who are we at the college? I mean, you know who we are. We are here as the regulator of the practice of physiotherapy in the province of Ontario. And we are one of many organizations that are here in the province supporting the practice of physiotherapy and trying to help physiotherapists deliver the highest quality care that they can. While most of the time we are all working towards a shared and common goal of supporting physiotherapists and ensuring that Ontarians have access to high quality care, there are differences in the way that we approach some of these questions or the way that we think about them. And for us, it comes through the lens of a public interest mandate. So we are a creature of statute, which means that we exist because the government has tasked us with the responsibility of regulating the practice of physiotherapy. But in exchange for that privilege or that right to regulate the practice, we are obligated to do so in the public interest, which means the way that we approach issues or the way that we think about things has to be through that lens first. And that filters through everything that we're doing, from how we evaluate credentials on your way in, how we support your practice throughout the journey, throughout your career, and then how we address concerns around conduct or care that's being provided as they are raised with us. But I might take a moment to invite Nitin to reflect on what the public interest means to him as our president and a member of our council.
Yeah, thank you, Craig. So, of course, I have also the not unique privilege, but the first time in our college's history of being the first president of council that's also a public appointee. And so over my almost, I guess, 4.5 years now on council, I've been able to learn a lot, not just about the profession, but about health regulation in general, as well as the broader regulatory environment, just really what it means to be a self-regulating profession. And so, I think most primarily about the main goal, which is about public protection. And for me, that means providing safe and effective care to those who need it, while protecting the public in the subset of that public, which is the profession, in order to continue doing this. And so, the thing that is top of mind for me always is maintaining the integrity and the privilege of being able to be self-regulated. That is all, every lens, the lens that I take on every conversation we have here. I think it's not too far of a bridge to say that the interests of the public and the interests of the profession are almost always aligned. We're all working towards a common goal in providing safe and effective care to the people of Ontario, right? And I think none of us wants to see a situation or scenario where that privilege of self-regulation is taken away or reduced by any means. And that's really what drives me in leading discussions with council and really behind every decision and any contemplation that we have as a group. And so to that end, on the next slide is just a quick highlight. You'll see this on our website, a quick highlight of our most recent strategic plan, right? All good strategic plans have some time bounds. And so this one we worked on in 21, 22 for this period between 22 and 2026. And, common to have a mission and vision, what it is we're striving to do and how we're planning on doing it. So our vision is to continue to inspire public confidence in the profession, and that mission and how we do that is by ensuring that physiotherapists provide competent, safe, and ethical care, right? These oftentimes, and I'll be the first to admit it, can be motherhood statements, but I think we chose these words purposefully to ensure that they have an impact, not just with the profession, but with the public at large, that it's meaningful, that it's not jargon, that it's things that people can connect with. And so I hope we've done that. And I hope it also resonates with the profession. And I think more broadly, digging into what that means, we look at the 4 pillars of that strategic plan that we've been able to establish. And so number 1, of course, is regulation and risk. At the core of our business is managing the risk associated with providing care to the community. This is not a risk-free endeavor. I would argue that anything worth doing always has some risk to it. But what is our role in continuing to monitor, manage, mitigate that risk, which is a big part of our regulatory role. Engagement and partnerships, right? This is what we're doing right now. I think it's important for us to continue to engage with interested system partners. Of course, the OPA and its membership is a big part of that. But more broadly, nationally speaking, with our national partners across the country and in each province, CAPR is a big one as it pertains to that. Of course, with government, special interest groups, looking more broadly within the healthcare community as well, right? I think we've had a lot of great conversations, and hopefully we'll have some great outputs to share as we continue to engage the broader healthcare sector in the importance that physiotherapists play and the role that physiotherapists play in being able to do more and keep people safe and keep people healthy. People and culture, I think is a pretty broad brush, but what that means is that, we've got the right lens on what it means to have the right people, the right talent, and that we're generating the right culture for the college to be doing what it does, that we are reflective of the people that we serve, both from a public and a professional standpoint, and we continue to grow and evolve with that. And so, I'll speak to EDI as that comes up later too, but equity, diversity, and inclusion is a big part of that. And then, of course, performance and accountability, right? We don't act in an unaccountable way. We are accountable to the people of Ontario, of which, you as professionals are people of Ontario. And so we need to understand what that performance and accountability looks like. How are we objectively measuring things to ensure that we're moving towards our vision of inspiring public confidence, right? I think it's important to measure. There's a lot of subjectivity in that measurement, but as a part of my mandate, and I think Craig would agree with this, is about bringing more objectivity to the table while also being transparent about how that measurement and accountability, performance accountability is shared.
And so, that's a big frame for us. So public interest is our mandate. Our strategic plan is council's direction to us as staff in terms of how to cash that out and how we are supposed to approach thinking about our regulatory work. But we wanted to drill down just a little bit deeper on a couple of the commitments that we've made in that strategic plan and share a little bit more about our philosophy or our approach and thinking in this space. So as it relates to the regulation and risk pillar of our strategic plan, we really are starting to focus in on this concept of right touch regulation. And if you've been hanging around the regulatory circles, as one does, you may have heard of this concept or this philosophy emerging in the past handful of years. And really, right touch regulation is just one way of thinking about or operationalizing a commitment to having a risk-based approach to regulation. Fundamentally, the underlying commitment in right touch regulation is that we exert a regulatory force that is proportionate to the risk that we're trying to address. We want to avoid a situation where we are under-regulating an issue that can lead to or create the real potential for harm. We want to make sure that if harm does occur, that the regulatory response we have to that harm is proportionate and responsive to the nature of the concern or the harm that's been done, and not take a sort of lighter hand touch in response to a concern. At the same time, it means that we want to avoid over-regulating a space. It means that we want to leave room for clinical and professional judgment to be exercised, and providing registrants with some information around where the bounds of appropriateness are, so that you are informed and can exercise and apply those in context. And it also means making sure that if there are concerns that need to be addressed, that our response to them is proportionate to the risk, that we're not choosing outcomes or dispositions that are misaligned with the risk that has, with the harm that has occurred. And so there's like a recalibration that's occurring across the entire regulatory sector as regulators adopt this right touch regulation philosophy. And I think we've had an opportunity in the past handful of years for many of us to figure out whether we've struck that right appropriate balance. And so along with this idea of proportionality is also a commitment to consistency, so that the same set of facts get the same set of dispositions, that we're targeted in our approach, that we're really trying to zero in on the risk that we're trying to address and not have overly broad regulatory rules that apply more broadly than is necessary to address the concern, that we are transparent so that our registrants can understand what those standards or rules or expectations are, and that we discharge this responsibility in a way that is where we are accountable to the registrants, but also to the public and to the government and to our other stakeholders. And then the last commitment in right touch regulation is that regulators seek to be agile. It is true that as a regulator, there is a level of sophistication or organization that is required in order to discharge our responsibilities. And sometimes that might be criticized as being a bureaucratic system that takes some time to change its direction in the face of emerging trends or issues. But as all regulators seek to adopt this concept of regulation, we are all trying to be more responsive to emerging issues or trends that are occurring out there in the space. So I wanted to take an example of the way that right touch regulation can actually be cashed out in practice. And I want to use our complaints and investigations process as an example. So there are just over 11,000 physiotherapists in the province of Ontario. And every year we receive in the neighborhood of 300 to 400 concerns that relate to the care or conduct of a physiotherapist. Now, about 40% of the concerns that come into the college are things that we're able to resolve through early resolution strategies or techniques. And this allows us to take an approach where about 40% of what comes in does not need to proceed to a full investigation. We're trying to find ways to address the concerns that are coming in that are either educational or remedial, or clarifying with individuals who are bringing forward information that they're intending for it to be a full investigation and complaint. An investigation is a big undertaking for us as the college, and of course, it's a very meaningful experience for physiotherapists. And if we're able to find a way to address the concerns or resolve the issue without undertaking a full investigation, we will. So then, from the remaining concerns that we see, every year, we might decide on around 100 to 150 of those cases. So this is our Inquiries, Complaints, and Reports Committee, making decisions in the neighborhood of 100 to 150 times over the course of a year. In 2022 to 2023, we had 114 decisions. And there are a variety of dispositions that are available to our committee as they are adjudicating that concern or responding to the investigation. And only 8 of the 114 cases that we decided had a referral to discipline. And it is only in the discipline context where a suspension or a revocation can be considered in response to the concerns that we're seeing. So we're talking about 11,000 physiotherapists in the province, millions of physiotherapist and patient interactions a year, a few hundred concerns coming into the college, nearly half of those being disposed of in a way that makes sort of sense given the concerns that are coming in. And then only 8 of the 100 or so that we're seeing every year be escalated to the highest sort of regulatory response that we have at the college. And this really is right touch regulation in action. It is trying to find the right response to the concerns that are being addressed and not under-regulating or over-regulating the space as we manage those concerns. Nitin spoke a little bit about our commitment to meaningful engagement. And for me, this really comes down to a commitment of nothing about me without me. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. And we've started this conversation in the chat already, but maybe I can take an opportunity to invite people to share where in the province they are. We've seen some people from Hamilton, from Burlington, from Windsor, from Belleville, from Stony Creek, but we want to get a broader sense of where people are joining us from tonight before we get going. Downtown, Barrie, Thousand Islands, North Bay, Cambridge, Guelph, Aurora. I'll share that I'm in Etobicoke, part of Toronto, Ajax, Pickering, Ottawa. Any others from the north? Thunder Bay, great. So we're seeing a bit of a mix. We're seeing some representation from across the province. And our commitment in Nothing About Me Without Me is to really just recognize that the decisions that we're making organizationally impact the public, impact our stakeholders, and impact the profession. And we want to make sure that before we go ahead and make those decisions, that we understand how that impact is going to be perceived, and that we understand your perspective to inform our processes. And we are stronger as decision makers when we understand what the perspectives of the registrants are, what the perspectives of the public are, and our system stakeholders as we seek to make decisions. And so that means that we really do want to hear from you. When there's a call for you to provide feedback, it is a genuine and open call for you to engage in our process. And we want to take opportunities to have conversations and to build relationships with the profession and with our partners. So, in the next little while, you will see us in a variety of places. You can see us tonight. You're going to see us at the OPA Interaction Conference. You're going to see us at other community events where we're trying to take an opportunity to share information with you, have a conversation, and build a relationship. Mary Catherine is a frequent presenter at our universities across the province, engaging with our future PTs on the regular. And we have lots of regular meetings with our system partners, the OPA included, in order to find those opportunities for shared and collaborative work. And we are taking as many opportunities as we can to provide content to you through webinars, other conversations, and to hear from you through our consultations. And for us, this really is about collaborating. It is about finding those opportunities to identify our shared interests and work together in order to achieve our shared goals. And it also helps us as a sector try to find some consensus around where we can make an impact and how we can support the profession and the public together. But we're not just here to work collaboratively and to hear from you. We're also here to support you. And I'll turn it over to MC to talk a little bit more about that.
Thanks, Craig. So we know that the vast majority of physios are doing great work, and we're here to help on that journey. So as a college, what we do is one of the things we try to do is develop these resources that Craig alluded to earlier, such as blogs and FAQs. And these are based on your questions and the inquiries that you have for us to help you practice according to your professional standards. And we're constantly striving to distribute these resources to you in ways that are easy for you to access. So maybe it's through our social media, in our perspectives newsletter, and even direct emails if that's needed. And of course, the direct line with you is our practice advice service. So I'm thrilled to be representing the practice advice team tonight. I was lucky enough to join the college as a practice advisor in 2020, after having practiced in Ontario for 20 years as a physio in private practice. As many of you might know, the Practice Advice Service offers a safe place for physiotherapists, for PT residents, students, patients, their families, other professionals, employers, and anyone who's got questions about physiotherapy practice to ask them. You can contact the practice advisors for free, and it's an anonymous advice service. It could be regarding how to apply our professional standards, or maybe a difficult situation that you might be facing at work. We can't provide you with legal advice or specific advice regarding clinical care, for example, but we can help you to identify which issues are going on in your situation and what the professional standards might guide us to in that situation. We don't record your name or your registration number when you call, but we do code the questions according to themes and which standards that we're accessing. So if there's a lot of questions, for example, around a particular standard, or there's a clinical situation that keeps arising and that standard doesn't seem to be answering the question or providing the guidance that we need, we can then roll that up to the policymakers, to the decision makers at the college, for them to consider when the next round, when they're reassessing those standards. We are a team of 3. Abby and Fiona and I are always here to take your calls or answer your emails. So if you're not sure what rule applies and you can't find something on the website, for example, just give us a call with it. One of the things that we love to help to solve is when we get a call from a physiotherapist, typically a Monday morning, maybe right at 8:30 when our phone lines open, and that physio has had something that happened Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, the week before, and they've not slept for a few days, and they're really concerned. Maybe their patient came back and the symptoms had increased, or there was an interaction with the patient that really rattled them, and they've been worried about calling the college. And by the time we finish chatting with them and they understand the process and they understand what the next steps could be, there's a lot of relief going on. And so just to remind you to please call sooner rather than later. We hate to hear that you've lost sleep over something, and we're really here to help you get through some of these tough situations that might be out there. Back to you, Craig.
And so we wanted to make sure that we took some time to tell you a little bit about what we're doing in the EDI space. I'm going to invite Nitin to reflect sort of broadly on our commitments and the work, and then I'll give you some concrete examples of the work that we're doing.
Thanks, Craig, and thanks for sharing that, MC. So you must be familiar with this term. It is very current in the zeitgeist at the moment. But I wanted to take a moment to actually share with you all what it means to us, right? And how we've absorbed it, digested it, and made meaningful progress, and continue, I hope, to make meaningful progress for what it means for the college and the mission and vision that we've set out for ourselves, at least until 2026. So, I think it's important for us to think of EDI not as a thing unto itself. It is not some box to check. It is not some goal to achieve. It is something that is woven through the fabric of all the work that we do at the college, both from a public facing as well as an internal facing view. I liken it to financial or fiscal conservatism. I liken it to good strategic planning. or to looking at things through the public protection lens. It is part of everything that we do. And so our commitment to it starts at the strategic plan level. But it really filters into all of our decision making, right? Are we considering diverse perspectives? Are we ensuring that those who traditionally or through bias, conscious or unconscious, would necessarily be excluded? It really takes us having a moment to pause, considering things that in the past I think we would never really consider. Taking the time and being mindful that there are other perspectives, that even though we have a fairly, on paper, diverse group of people sitting around the council table, even for us to take a step back and consider what we potentially would have missed or potentially would not have considered. And then I think, importantly, back to the performance and accountability piece is, how are we measuring this? I think if you can't measure it, you can't show progress against it. And so building in meaningful metrics, meaningful ability to measure how we are engaging in this space, what we are doing to grow this as a competency is important to us. And I think that is an area that is still evolving, one that we have a lot of work to do on. But the last thing I want to do is have lip service to these things, right? I want to show meaningful engagement and meaningful progress in the EDI lens. It is also, I would just quickly mention, a bit of a delicate balance, right? I think we've all seen historical examples of when you start to measure something, it can also go the wrong way. So I think for us, it's about holding each other accountable, making sure the public that we serve holds us accountable, that we're measuring things and moving this needle in the right direction.
And so just to give some examples of ways that we're trying to make progress in this, and to sort of bring the strategic commitment down to a concrete level. In the past little while, we've had an opportunity to really sort of focus in on a few spaces where I think we're able to demonstrate that we've had some success moving forward here. So we have a Transitioning to Practice in Ontario module that's going to be released in the next little while. This is a module that really serves to anyone coming to work in the Ontario context, but one of the genesis for this was really recognizing that individuals who are coming from different healthcare systems with different educational experiences may have unique challenges transitioning to the Ontario context. And we want to be here to support them in order to provide them with the best opportunity for a seamless transition. And so there's a real focus in our Transitioning to Practice in Ontario module that's tailored to trying to help internationally educated physiotherapists to come and find success in the province, and to become familiar with the Ontario healthcare system and the way that practice is structured prior to coming here, or to support them as they're moving into our system. We've also really tried to make sure that we have increased access to an exam in the province of Ontario. We now have a reliable exam that is running on the regular. We just closed day 2 of our March cycle this afternoon. And that exam is now being reliably provided in a virtual modality, which is supporting access across the province and allowing us to even provide opportunities for examination across borders, so individuals can take the exam where they are. And in the past year or so, about 62% of the individuals that have been coming through that exam identify as being internationally educated. We also had an opportunity to really start thinking about how physiotherapy intersects with the Indigenous communities in the North. We had an opportunity to have a presentation to our council on the Community Rehabilitation Worker Program that's been developed up in Northern Ontario. I think that was a very enlightening experience for us at that table. And so we created an opportunity for a guest blog post in our Perspectives issue to share that learning from all of that great work with the rest of the profession, to provide that insight on providing culturally appropriate and sensitive care. Internally, of course, we've been trying to improve our processes so that from a quality assurance and exam perspective, individuals who require or need accommodations are able to meaningfully identify that upfront and early in our process so that we can be responsive to those needs. As we develop and rolled out our exam schedule, we reviewed all faith calendars to ensure that we weren't conflicting with any important religious or faith-based observances. Internally at the staff level, we have an Indigenous Awareness Week where we invite staff to reflect and learn, leading up to the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. In terms of our examiner recruitment, we've made a concerted effort to ensure that we have representation both from our Canadian and our internationally educated registrants to support that work. And then internally, we've been doing a lot of training around plain language, gender inclusive writing, anti-bias training for our committee members and for our examiners to support a better experience for all of those who are interacting with our processes. And we've also been moving towards providing our services in multiple languages, French being the core alternative to English. This is true for our PISA, for our jurisprudence, and our exam. We just launched our first French exam back in January. But we're also now offering interpretation services for individuals who are engaged in our conduct service, our conduct space, so that they're able to interact in a way that supports them the best. So going back to what Nitin said, while these are concrete examples of ways that we're trying to make progress, none of us are oblivious to the fact that there's a significant amount of work to do moving forward. We still have lots of opportunity to strengthen our own understanding at the council level, at the staff level, and in our regulatory activities through continued education and training. But we also have an opportunity in the years ahead to work with the profession itself to provide you with support and guidance in this space as you reflect on how to bring these principles into your practice and into the communities that you serve. And some of this work will be manifest in new standards down the road, and we will engage you in that process for sure. And then there's also an opportunity to make sure that we are hearing, responding, and partnering with a diversity of voices so that we are meaningfully hearing from the diversity of individuals that you serve and the diversity of individuals that are represented in the profession. Nitin, do you want to chime in?
Yeah, just quickly, I want to, ensure that there's no doubt from a governance perspective. It starts with us, and at the end of the day, we hold the ultimate accountability to ensure that this is woven into everything that we do. So, as members of the profession, by all means, you should feel comfortable accessing us as a group in order to address any potential EDI areas that we may be overlooking or could potentially show growth in. Right, it's on us to continue to drive Craig and the organization forward when it comes to these things. Right, at the end of the day, governance is the driver of all of this, and so I don't want that to be lost on any of this. Right, there's a lot of work to do from an operational standpoint, but we are accountable ultimately to ensure that we're moving forward in this space.
So lots to come on that front. But we want to take an opportunity as well to share some work that's happening in the standards front. So I'll invite MC to talk a little bit more, and then I'll chime in as well.
Thanks, Craig. So as you heard earlier, one of the college's roles is to develop rules and standards for physiotherapists' practice and conduct, including the Code of Ethics. In Ontario right now, we currently have 12 professional standards, and they provide us as physios with guidance and an expectation of behavior. The things related to record keeping, professional boundaries, working with PTAs, fees, billing and accounts, or providing and refusing care, for example. They're really the starting point of professional obligations and practice expectations. The practice standards were developed by physiotherapists for physiotherapists, and they reflect how we feel that we ought to practice. So as registrants of the college, it's our requirement to be familiar with the standards and how they apply to our clinical lives. At the college, our standards are principle-based as opposed to how-to manuals. So for example, the college doesn't set fees for physiotherapy services in Ontario, but the fees, billing, and account standard says that fees charged must be accurate and reasonable and must not be excessive. The other role that practice standards play is that they help the public understand what to expect from their interaction with their physiotherapist, and this will build confidence that their physiotherapist is going to practice in a high professional standard. And the other cool thing about standards is that they adapt with change. And so we have some exciting changes coming to our standards that Craig is going to share with you now. Okay.
So for the past few years, there's been a lot of work happening at the national level. The PT regulators have gotten together and sought to do an overhaul of a national set of model standards. The goal here is really to try to, as much as possible, drive consistency in terms of the expectations that physiotherapists are held to in Ontario and Alberta and BC, or in the Atlantic provinces, or pick your jurisdiction. There's a implicit recognition that appropriate conduct is appropriate conduct across the country, and that assessment shouldn't just be a jurisdiction by jurisdiction assessment. And so based on a whole heck of a lot of work that the national group did, the engagement of a consultant, a lot of consultation, including feedback from, I believe, over 1,000 Ontarian physiotherapists, a set of model standards were developed. And now each jurisdiction is reflecting on those standards and determining whether or not they're fit for purpose in our jurisdiction and engaging in a process to roll them out. Here in Ontario, what we're doing is assessing them in sort of batches or buckets. And we've picked those buckets in a way that sort of supports as seamless of a rollout as we possibly can, recognizing that there's a lot of expectations or standards that are going to replace existing ones we have, but there are some new ones in the baskets as well. And so right now, what we have out for consultation are 4 of our draft standards. So there's the assessment, diagnosis, and treatment, communication, duty of care, and risk management and safety standards that are out for feedback. This is an opportunity for you to reflect on whether or not you think that this is fit for purpose here in Ontario, whether they're providing you with the guidance and support that you need to understand what the rules of the road are, and to help inform us as we make the next decision as to whether or not to adopt these as for final approval. In the next year and a half or so, at just about every council meeting, we're going to be evaluating a new batch and sending them back out for consultation. So we are going to be asking for your feedback multiple times over the next year and a half in order to inform our processes. And I really do encourage you to be involved to help us assess whether or not those standards are going to be helpful and work for you in practice. So that's my call to action, but I want to throw it to Nitin for a broader call to action and engagement with us.
Yeah, thanks. So we can't do this without you. I mean, we could, but why would we, right? I think it takes everyone to play a part in this, where they have the capability and ability and time and interest. So there's lots of ways to continue to get involved, and I would encourage you to consider any one or all of these things based on your time. We have space for peer opinion providers who are kind of really at the heart of some of the work that we do with quality and with practice advice, and lots of different profession-specific activities associated with the college's work. Quality assurance assessors, again, if you feel like you've contributed to this space for a long time, have something to give back, this is a great place for you to be a leader amongst your peers in driving a better physiotherapy practice in your community. OCE examiners, so we're continually looking for support as the profession continues to grow and we see increased volumes, especially from internationally educated physiotherapists coming in and needing to take this exam. We need people who know this space to help us deliver that exam. Council elections are a big one. We've just, I think, closed the window for this next year, but keep an eye out for next year. We're always looking. Sometimes there's by-elections. Get involved from a college perspective. I think, certainly as I am biased in this space, but I find that there is great value in contemplating the things we need to consider around the college's council table. And it doesn't just have to be on council. There's a lot of opportunity and probably going to be a little bit more of non-council committee member help. So this means sitting on committees where you don't necessarily need to commit to our quarterly meeting schedule, but our committees that meet with varying levels of frequency, things like patient advisory, things like quality, things like practice advice. There's lots of work that we need help on from a non-council committee space. And then finally, Craig talked about this feedback on our national standards, right? So this is an ongoing piece of work where you are able to contribute, via text, or if you want to have a phone call with someone, I'm sure someone will help you with that. We want to have it as an accessible way for you to provide your feedback as possible. Don't feel like sitting down in front of your computer and writing out a 500 word email is the only way, right? If you want to speak to us about your feedback, certainly we will take it that way too. So, this is not just the only way. There's lots of ways to get involved. We've got all of our Tombstone information here. Find us on all the socials. But Craig, by all means, take it home.
Well, I would give a big plug for our Instagram. I do love what our communications team is doing with our Instagram these days. So please do follow us. It is a great way to hear what's coming out of the college and where you have opportunities to get involved, and to sort of get the latest news from us. We really are trying to leverage those as a way to communicate with you. But I would be remiss if I didn't go back to practice advice. It is a really wonderful service that we have at the college. And yes, we have 8,000 inquiries a year, which is a lot of uptake, but we would happily take more if it's helping the profession navigate the challenges that they're seeing in practice. So we will stop talking now, and we are happy to take any questions that you might have. You can use the chat feature if you'd like to ask the questions, and as things come in, staff will help us filter through them. And while we're waiting for conversation in the chat, we did get a few questions in advance, and I might take an opportunity to answer a couple of those now. So one of the questions that we've received in advance was around scope of practice and where the college is on this issue. You'll know that the college and the OPA had a joint submission many years ago, advocating for expanded scope of practice for physiotherapists, specifically around the ordering of diagnostics. The college continues to be supportive of this work with the OPA. Our position has not changed, and we're ready to implement any change that occurs in this space should the government consider making the necessary changes in our regulations. We've been clear and vocal in terms of what our position is, and how we are here to support that work when the time is ready. Do you want to give a chance for some questions if they are in the chat? Otherwise, we can go to another pre-submitted one. MC, you want to take this one?
Sure. So one of the questions that we had submitted ahead of time was, can there be an attempt for the college to get the word physiotherapy as a protected title like massage therapy? So the protected titles in Ontario are physiotherapist, physical therapist, physiotherapy resident, and physiotherapist resident, as well as the initials of PT and PT resident. The term physiotherapy is not protected. The term massage therapy is not protected. The term medicine is not protected. What we know is that it's the titles that are protected in Ontario. And so our college is in accordance with those other colleges in the terms of which terms are protected.
I see we have a question in the chat asking about how our standards compare to the standards of other allied health professionals. So OT, speech language pathology. MC, might you be able to say a little bit about that?
Well, some of the standards we're required to have them, and they're part of the RHPA. So you have to have a boundaries and sexual abuse standard, for example, if you're one of the colleges in Ontario that are regulated through the RHPA. Other colleges have different types of standards as well. So they may have more of a principle-based standard or more of a practice-based standard, depending on who's leading that work. But you'll see a lot of overlap between them. It really gets down to the differences that you'll see really come down to things like if a college regulates the business, so like the clinic itself versus the physiotherapist itself. So in some provinces, that's different versus in Ontario. And for some professions, that's different as well. So, but you'll see a lot of common ground with regards to record keeping, with regards to boundaries. There'll be differences in ours with working with PTA standard. That's very unique to us as a profession. You won't find that one in other professions, but they will have some guidelines and some guidance around working with assistants.
Yeah, and I think something that all regulatory bodies strive for is to try to find alignment where you have the same kinds of issues. It is true, though, that we are all different regulatory bodies, and we're all governed by different councils or different boards. And so, we can work towards finding that alignment, but there are different decision makers that are involved. And I will just say, having come from another regulatory space, to see the national work that's happening in the physiotherapy profession is incredibly inspiring. To walk in and to hear about this national standards project was really, really wonderful. And for us to be a participant in that space and to be able to help roll that out feels really meaningful, to find that kind of alignment within the profession rather than even disparity within the profession. So that's really great. And we got another question in the chat around getting involved at the college as a QA assessor or in other ways. So really, I'm going to plug our social medias. Watch those social media platforms or our Perspectives newsletters when we're in a position to have a call out for assessors or coaches or examiners. That's where you will find the call. So just recently, we put a call out for new coaches in our QA space, and I'm delighted to say that there was a lot of interest, which is really wonderful to see in the profession. So keep an eye out in those spaces. That's where we will put out the calls for your participation in our space. And that's true for the elections as well, or any of the other roles where we might have an opportunity to work together. There was also a question around the EDI training that the CPO team is using. There's not a one size here, and not just one provider that we're using. We've had a number of different speakers who've come to council and provided some education or some training to build awareness. I don't have the names handy, but those are things that we can provide after if you reach out to us. And then internally, we've used a handful of different trainers or individuals who have consultants who have expertise in this space to come in. So by way of example, the management team at the CPO just did some training in unconscious bias so that we are aware of how that can impact how we approach or think about different issues or how we engage. And we had a consultant come in and share some information there. But if you want some more, just feel free to reach out to me and I can provide some additional detail. Do we collaborate with other countries regarding ongoing challenges? This is a great opportunity, I think, for us to be thinking not just locally, not just nationally, but internationally. But I will admit that that's a big ask and a big challenge. I think as we move forward in this space, there will be a real opportunity for regulators and credentialing bodies alike to be thinking about how international jurisdictions compare to one another so that we can try to find some streamlining and efficiencies there. But I don't want to understate how much work that is. That is a lot of work, but there are models that we can follow going forward. Who receives the EDI training and how is it communicated to members of the college? Internally, we are starting to share as a part of my report to council every quarter. We are identifying what progress we are making in EDI, how we are advancing our training, and where we are making progress. And in the coming months or years, you will see concerted efforts on our part to communicate that information out more broadly. But that'll be coming. Okay, now the chat's really starting to flow. Taylor, maybe you can step in and help me out, make sure I'm answering the questions as they come.
Yeah, for sure. So we just had someone ask when the transitioning to practice learning modules would be coming out, and they're actually going to be coming out this month. So keep an eye on your inbox for perspectives in the next couple weeks, and we're really excited to release those. I think that's all the questions in the chat right now, but we did have a couple more that came in previously. me just flip over here. So we had someone asking, equity-seeking patients continue to experience health disparities and harm. What is the CPO doing to bring awareness and to make cultural humility an essential clinical competence for all physiotherapists?
I mean, that's a great question, and that's a big question. So, as a part of our reflections in the EDI topic tonight, we were talking about our need to support the profession in this space. One of the national standards that this college has not yet adopted is on anti-racism and providing care in a manner that's free from discrimination. It's not that the college didn't agree with it, it's just that we hadn't done the right work in that space yet. And the British Columbia College was leading that work. And for those of you who've been following how work in this space has been evolving over the past year, you'll know that BC is quite a bit ahead of many provinces, in part because it's been embedded into their legislation. And the In Plain Sight report really challenged basically every organization in BC to move in a relatively quick way. But we as an organization are committed to developing our own standard in that space in a meaningful way that involves partnership and engagement with you. So it is a commitment of ours to provide structured guidance and expectations in this space. But in the meantime, we do take an opportunity to leverage our Perspectives newsletter to share information with you in that space. MZ, might you be able to reflect on some of the articles or content we've pushed out?
Yeah, so the other big tool we've recently we launched in January is our patient-centered communication module. And this module is an opportunity for physiotherapists to really reflect on their communication skills and take a minute to make sure that they are addressing patients for who they are as the people that they are, that they're taking a moment to consider how they're communicating. Are they being respectful in the way they communicate? Are they looking at that person as a whole and considering them as a whole in terms of what are their goals, what's going to be a meaningful treatment goal for them, what could be some of the challenges that they're experiencing. So we have created the module to really represent a diverse group of patients and therapists to hopefully more representatively or more adequately represent the realities of providing care in Ontario as well. So that can be really helpful for advancing some of this work.
And just being cognizant of time, Nitin, is there any last reflections that you want to share?
No, only to say that hopefully that this is a bit of a turn in how the profession sees our role, specifically in transparency and as a system partner and a collaborator. But I want to, especially given my mandate in this position, for now, do as much as I can to continue to strengthen the bonds between the OPA and the CPO in doing what is best for not just the profession, but for the people of Ontario. So I hope this is a step in the right direction. I would like to see more of this happen and see the bonds between us grow. Oren and I have certainly already talked about that, and we'll be doing the same with the incoming president of the OPA. So looking forward to more of this. And thank you, just a big thank you for spending the time with us this evening to hear us out.
And I will follow up to return the thanks. So today was meant to be a chat together, all together. So thank you, Mary Catherine, Craig, and Nitin for joining us and for sharing so much information. And as we saw someone share in the chat, thanks for the transparency. Thanks for sharing some of those processes. And we look forward to continued conversations. Thank you to everyone who could attend today. And if you want to follow up on the conversation, please contact the college directly, but also everyone you see, there will be many people, even more than you see here today, joining us for conference. So interaction on March 22nd and 23rd. So we hope to see many of you there to continue the conversation.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
See you later this month.